cover every single killer in Die of Death and how to use them, including Pursuer, Badware, Artful, Harkin, and Droid. If you want a part 2 but for survivors, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video, if you want to of course. Remember, it's all optional but still free. The first killer I will be describing will probably be the easiest to use, and if you paid attention at all during the title, you'll know that I'm talking about Pursuer. Pursuer is free in the shop and is the starting killer every player has by default. Now let's move on to the abilities. Pursuer is very easy to use as he has 4 abilities. Starting off with the first one is the M1 or swing. I won't talk about it much because all you have to do on PC is click your mouse. That's about it. The cooldown is 1 second and it does 20 damage to the survivor. The second ability I'm going over is Cleave, as you have to press Q to activate it, and what it does is make you go faster for a tiny bit, and then if a survivor is right in front of you, the Cleave hits them and it does 20 base damage and 10 bleeding damage over the duration of 5-ish seconds. And the cooldown is 20 seconds. This ability is very useful if the survivor is just out of reach for an M1 but still close enough to where you can damage them. The third ability I'm going to talk about is the Howl. It's not the best ability, but it isn't bad either. You press E to activate it, and what it does is slow down survivors in a 100 stud radius. Not by much, but still enough for you to get a single hit if you're lucky. Or it can stop looping and make the survivor closer. The cooldown is 35 seconds. I personally don't use this ability because I can never catch up to the survivor in time for it to be useful enough for me. Finally, there's Stalk. Stalk is probably one of the best abilities Pursuer has, and what it does is allow you to go invisible and then go really fast to catch up to survivors who could be across the map. You press R to activate it, and it's probably one of the most useful abilities in an LMS because the last survivor is almost always across the map, or at least for me according to my luck. Also, there's one trick to this. If you unshroud by pressing R, you have more of a cooldown to your abilities than if you just let it go naturally. The cooldown for this ability is 15 seconds. This is probably my favorite abilities, as you can sneak up on people to give them a heart attack. Now I will talk about Badware, which is a tiny bit more complicated than Pursuer because there's more tricks to him than almost any other killer. Badware costs 500 points in the shop. Now for the abilities. The first ability is the same one Pursuer has, an M1 or swing, which deals a fifth of the survivor's health with a cooldown of 1 second. Badware's number 2 is Firewall Bypass, which is almost absolutely necessary to use. When Badware places down a computer by pressing Q, Badware gets a slight boost in speed when he's within 100 studs of the computer. This ability will also come in handy later, as it has a 15-second cooldown. Honestly, the best ability Badware has. There is one downside to it, however, as survivors can walk up and slowly destroy the computer by spamming an interact button. When the computer reaches 90% or more, it explodes and gets destroyed. Badware can only place down 6 computers because if he could place unlimited, it just wouldn't be fair. Now, Badware's third ability is Bolt, and it is also very useful when Badware presses E to use it. It winds up, and if you know Noli and Forsaken, Bolt is basically a Void Rush. Successfully hitting a survivor with Bolt does 10 damage, and here's where the computers come in handy, as each computer placed down makes Bolt do an extra 5 damage. The cooldown for Bolt is also 20 seconds, which is honestly fair. This basically makes Badware rounds his speedrun to place down as much computers as possible. The last ability also heavily relies on the computers, also known as Rift. When the killer presses R, they get put into an idle state and can teleport to a computer like plates. When Badware rifts to a computer, there is a 25-second cooldown and it destroys the computer. This is only good when survivors are across the map from you because one more bonus Rift has is being able to damage survivors around the PC. If a survivor is right next to a computer when Badware rifts to it, it deals 10 damage to that survivor. Now that we have Pursuer and Badware done and out of the way with, let's make some noise for our fellow French fry, Artful. Artful costs a whole 700 points in the shop and isn't exactly the easiest to use either. Artful's first ability is, who would have guessed at this point, it's an M1 that deals 20 damage and has a single second cooldown. The second ability that Artful has is Implement, which literally just places down a wall that decays over time, and the activator key is Q. The cooldown for this ability is 15 seconds, and this ability is good for, or would be good for, rounding up survivors in an area if the maps didn't have areas just wide enough to make the wall useless. Artful's next ability is Copyright, which is activated by the E key. When Artful does a copyright, he places down a small rotating cube where he's standing, and any survivors near will be slowed down by a large amount, just a little bit more than Pursuer's Howl. The cooldown is 35 seconds, and I think this ability is amazing for closing off areas, but it is quite annoying when a survivor stands right inside of it and basically makes the music box useless. Now the last ability Artful has is Repurpose and is activated by R. This one's going to be a little bit of a yap because there's so much behind it. When Artful repurposes, if he's standing next to either a wall, a music box, or a player, they will get stored temporarily, allowing Artful to reuse them after a few second cooldown. When Artful repurposes a wall and uses it, it shoots out an object where Artful's character is looking, similar to Killjoy's main ability. When Artful repurposes / reuses a music box, it makes him faster, allowing him to catch up to survivors quicker. And for the last one, when Artful reuses a player, it places down a humanoid robot that attacks players for him, similar to minions that some Forsaken killers use. For the second last killer, we have Harkin, and she isn't as bad to use, unlike the last two we just talked about. She costs 880 points in the shop and is completely worth it in my opinion. Harkin also has a noise meter passive, which when survivors or other killers use abilities around Harkin, her noise meter slowly fills up, and when it does, she becomes enraged, having less stamina and more attack damage. For abilities, her first one is another M1. Wow. Harkin's second ability is probably her most useful, that being Agitation, being activated by Q. When Harkin uses Agitation, there's a tiny windup, and then she shoots a beam of light, damaging any survivors in front of her by 15, and it fills up her noise meter by 5. The cooldown is 20 seconds, and is really good for any looping survivors, only if you can guess where they are. Harkin's third ability is also very useful, that being Tangle, activated by E. When Harkin uses her Tangle ability, it's very similar to Agitation, where instead of a tall beam, Harkin throws a spear very quickly, and any survivors in front of her that get hit will get 20 HP, but also dragged to the killer. If the Tangle is hit successfully, Harkin will get a 1.2x damage boost on that specific survivor. The only downside is that if the survivor pulls off an ability on the killer that they are tangled to, the chain breaks, generating 10 noise, and the cooldown for that ability is 25 seconds. Harkin's last ability is quite the graphic one, that being Immolate, activated by R. When Harkin uses Immolate, she takes out her spear, puts it through her chest, dealing 80 damage to Harkin, and an additional 20 bleeding damage, and giving the noise meter 15 extra noise, and Harkin gains a massive speed boost. If no survivors are within 75 studs of Harkin, her speed boost gets increased by 5, but this ability can't be used while in rage and has a 35-second cooldown. Now we're moving on to the killer that I like the best and personally main, Killjoy, who costs 1000 points in the shop. Killjoy is also the only killer in the game that is exclusively ranged and has a passive where he can ignore borders entirely. Instead of having a boring swing ability, Killjoy's first M1 ability is Eject. When Killjoy uses Eject, he gets briefly slowed down to nearly 0 and launches a whole double missile nuclear rocket system, and when it hits a survivor, instead of just 20 damage, it deals 25, making it deal a fourth of the survivor's health, which is impressive, but the cooldown is 2.5 seconds instead of 1. The second ability Killjoy has is Flight. When Killjoy presses Q, he pauses for a second and takes flight. While Killjoy is flying, his rockets lock onto survivors, making him effectively have an aimbot. When Killjoy lands on the ground, he gets ragdolled for a moment and can get back up like nothing happened. The cooldown for this ability is 20 seconds. Killjoy's third ability is Deploy, which is activated by pressing E. When Killjoy deploys, he pauses and summons a killbot to the location he's standing. When survivors walk near the killbot, it charges up over time, and when the counter reaches 5, it explodes, dealing 25 damage to any survivors near. The cooldown is 15 seconds and is very useful for blocking off areas of the map, unless the survivors know that you can just run straight through it. The last ability we will talk about in this video is Detonate, activated by the R key. When Killjoy detonates, he pauses for a second and makes a warning sound. After the warning sound is done playing, Killjoy gets only 70 stamina and he can't regen the stamina either, so Killjoy gets a good speed boost. After a little bit, Killjoy explodes, dealing 30 damage to any survivors within 15 studs and slows down the survivors nearby. But Killjoy deals 125 damage to himself. The cooldown is 25 seconds. I personally don't recommend this ability because all you do is make yourself more vulnerable to death, plus you can already damage yourself by falling off the map. There is also an upcoming ability, thankfully replacing Detonate, called Propel. When Killjoy propels, Killjoy launches into the air and slams back down onto the ground, and if he hits a survivor, it does some damage. This is an upcoming ability at the time of recording this, so this might not be accurate. Thanks for watching the video. If you want more from me, you should subscribe and pray that I don't evaporate for 3 months again. See y'all hopefully in the next video.